Good evening. What day is it? It's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hope you are well. And I sure look like I am buffering already. It's probably because I'm trying to use Chrome. Yep, I am. I gotta start over. I'm gonna start over. Give me a second, guys. Sorry. All right, let's try it again. That's a little bit better. Oh, okay. So hopefully it catches up. So I don't know, Ross. Yeah, I said actually 7:30, but we'll just jump right into that. So yeah, I'm early tonight. My wife is going out of town Thursday through Sunday, and I thought I would be a good husband and move my show up so we could have dinner together tonight. She doesn't get home till late. So that's why we're here even earlier than our early plan. Yeah. So she's going to I'm trying to share a post, I'm sorry. She's going to where is she going? New York City. She's going to New York City. I am not going to New York City for a myriad of reasons. Number one, I think the what in the world is going on? I'm sorry, guys. The idea of going to New York City just really kind of freaks me out. I don't do well with I don't do well with crowds, and I know it sounds kind of weird because I'm just kind of like an outgoing personality kind of guy. But it just does not sound like it was a good idea. So I am definitely not. I'm definitely not going to. I want to see the. Why can't I see the comments on this? I'm sorry, guys. We're literally a step away from me paying full attention to what I'm trying to do and what I've been trying to do for a while now. Why is it in full screen mode? I even came down early tonight because I cooked dinner early. I got that ready, so we just need to heat it up. And then I came down and I moved some stuff around and I got extra lighting. So if you want to notice over here, this is new, okay? This is, I'm trying to get that corner. Okay, so this is, I know it's not just a Northeast Ohio thing, but Northeast Ohio, like we love our wood paneling and finished basements. And so that's what is down here. I don't like wood paneling finished basements. It reminds me of like the 80s, and I'm a huge fan of finished basements. However, I just don't care for it. So eventually one day I want to tear said wood paneling down and replace it. However, that is first off not in my skill sets at all. And then second of all, I don't really know what I would put on it. So to kind of like get that out of the background, because that was the one thing that bugged me the most was that corner. So I started moving some stuff around, and I'm sort of like making an enclosure now. If you ever want to, you can call me and I'll show you around down here, because this is not me like trying to like be boastful or anything. The setup down here now is unbelievable. It is like I love, I've always been a basement guy. I like the basement. It's always cooler. It's darker, which is ironic because there's 4 photography lights that are on right now and 5 monitors and all that stuff. So it's really, really bright down here when I do the show. But I just prefer the basement. And so, as I've mentioned before, when we bought the house and we were looking at it originally, we saw that the basement was finished. My ever caring and ever patient and ever so many other things wife, she kind of gave me the look and she's like, you can have the basement. So we split the basement. Half of it is like a living area, and then half of it is my area. And I've evolved from one desk and like one camera and one monitor to I have 4 monitors now. I have a 40-inch TV that I double as a monitor, which is over in the corner. I have 3 desks to make an L-shaped desk. Like, like if you're familiar with The Office when Dwight makes Mega Desk, do you remember that episode where Jim's on, I think, maternity leave? And so he combines everybody's desks, his and Pam's, together. And so he has like that 3-part desk and he does something on each station. That's pretty much what it's like down in the basement at our household. But I've really like, I don't know, this is my thing. Like, I'm not into sports. I don't work on cars, nothing like that. And so I like, I just like having a nice office area in the basement. But I say that to like, that's why it looks different back there. So I just wanted to like point out. And I also want to point out too, another thing is if you can see I know it's kind of hard to read the books back there. However, you can see the cover. Shout out to Lexham Press. So I am an affiliate with Logos. Many of you know that I'm a huge fan of Logos, and I freely promote their stuff. They graciously made me an affiliate, and then I got an email from a guy one day from Lexham Press, which is the physical books side of the organization, which they're also under Logos. They asked if I'd be interested in receiving physical books, and I said, "You had me at, are you interested in receiving physical books?" So they've been sending me stuff like all the time. Those copies right there, there's the 3 red covered books, and then there's the one next to it, which is the Lexham Geographic Commentary on Acts through Revelation. That is a fantastic resource. And again, I don't get anything from Lexham Press. They just send me stuff. I do reviews on it. And if it's something that I'm going to recommend, I'm going to recommend it regardless if somebody's going to throw me a couple of bucks. It's a fantastic resource. And I think if you are interested in kind of shaping your biblical worldview, but also growing in your knowledge of Scripture, that's definitely something to use. I think it's a good resource to have. So what are we going to do tonight? I have this. I want to talk about this Bill Johnson article. The article is from. Why can I not get my stuff pulled up on my tablet? I'm trying to see. There we go. Oh my gosh! Finally. That's probably a reason why too. My internet is running really slow lately. Bill Johnson spoke with Christianity Today. Well, I don't know if he spoke directly to them, but there is an article. Or no, I'm sorry, not Christianity Today. I apologize, Christian Post. How dare I say that? Christian Post. The article is. Okay, so let me just catch up real quick on what that is in case you are not familiar with that. Gosh, what has it been now? It's been a couple of weeks. There was a poor child that was sick and then was declared, I think, declared dead or past any medical help. No, she was declared dead. And she 2 years old. And Derek says, "Here's Bill Johnson. Blood pressure intensifies." I have Derek, if you're hanging around, I have a really good story to talk to you about of an interaction that I just had, and it's kind of that point. But so the leaders of Bethel and the mother is on the worship team. I don't know if it's the big Bethel worship, but she's all like listed as like a person on the team, so she's got to be a part of that branch. It was her daughter, and so what they did was they Brandon texted me. Brandon should be watching the live show. He said he's texting me about G3, and I had so many people text me about going to G3, and I should have, but I'm not. I'm actually trying to get to Ligonier in March. I was approved to be a volunteer at the national conference to work at the info booth, and then I got free tickets. That's my plan. Either way, sorry, my phone went off. This little girl, she died. There was. It's not like she was in a coma. It's not like nothing like that. She was declared dead, and they rallied around their performance, I think is the best way to say it. Because if you've watched Bethel worship in their church, it's a performance. It's not, So they started posting about this little girl and about how they are. If you are familiar with Bethel's theology, this is not as surprising. But if you're not familiar, this statement might sound a little off, and you might even question if it's legitimate, and I promise you that it is. Bethel commands God to do things. Like, if I had somebody in my life that was greatly sick, I am going to pray fervently for that person. I am and people get that mixed up. Like, I'm a cessationist. I believe that the miraculous sign gifts have ceased. That's for an entirely different episode. However, I am going to pray earnestly for that person, that if it's according to God's will, he would heal that person. Not any faith healer, not by anything I'm going to do, but that he would see it worthy to heal that person, okay? Bethel, on the other hand, what they do is they have sort of this how dare you if you don't type of prayer or commands, okay? They demand God to do these things. And their theology teaches, literally, I mean, I did a sermon evaluation of Bill Johnson. And it was funny because somebody posted, I forget what video that I did a little bit ago, and I made the same comment. I reviewed Bill Johnson's sermon where he made a statement that on the cross, Christ bought not just salvation, but your physical healing, okay? So now, you have to agree that the work of Christ on the cross was perfect and complete. You have to. So if that is true, then if you equate that work with healing, not divine healing, but physical healing, you can't separate those two. So if you're not healed, then what happened? Okay, and we talked about this again too, who's to blame? Well, you have two options, and unfortunately with this type of theology, your option is that God is a liar. And I don't need to elaborate on that anymore about how dangerous that is to say, to sort of shake your fist at God. And so what's even worse then is, how do you teach that God does not want you to be sick, poor, suffering, any of those things? How do you teach that? And then all of this stuff happens. And because, Chris and I were talking about this, and this is a big thing with Bethel. They get so much news coverage. It's unbelievable. We were talking about Passion Conference last night. We were talking about how we, as he and I, over the last X amount of years, we've watched this conference grow to 60-some thousand people. I think we're there this year. But Fox News and CNN and the Washington Post and all these places pick up the story about this Passion Conference and all the things going on there. Well, the same thing happened with Bethel and this praying for this little girl that was dead to be resurrected. Everybody got a hold of it. Everybody got a hold of this story, because doesn't that sound, think about, I always say this too, think about just in and of itself, if the prosperity gospel is true, okay? If it was in fact true, then why is not everyone teaching that? Because a life of no suffering, a life of no sickness, a life of no struggles and things like that, that sounds fantastic. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty good to me. And especially it sounds good to me because my loved ones, my friends, they could buy into that system as well. So that's the one I'm going to choose. If I had my option, if that's literally true, then that's what I'm doing. So the world sees this type of stuff going on, and they think that's Christianity. And it was interesting because a girl that goes to our church, she's, I believe she's 18. She might be 17. So she came up to me and she said, that article you shared about Bethel, it was really good. And I'm glad that you shared that, because so many people are getting a bad taste of Christianity because of what they're doing. And I was I almost, if I was Pentecostal, I would have fallen out. Because she got it. That's the issue, okay? And that's why, listen, I'm nobody. And this is also Chris and I'm going to shout out Chris. I was going to say this if he wasn't here. I really appreciate this dude. I appreciate everybody that I've gotten to become friends with, but there's certain guys that I've we've traded phone numbers and we talk all the time, and we've really gotten close. And like Derek is here too, and Ross is here too, and my mom's here, and of course I'm close with my mom. But the guys that have sort of that God has brought into my life, I'm so grateful for. And there's all this stuff going on, and it seems like a lot of us are going through it. And we were Instagram voice messaging each other back and forth for, I don't know, probably an hour. And then all of a sudden my phone rings and it's Chris, and I just answered the phone and I started laughing because I was like, yeah, we should have done this a long time ago. But we were discussing, like, we're little guys. Like that's the whole reason why I created the Facebook group, the Preach the Word group, because we're just little guys, okay? We don't have desires to have 10 million people worshiping us like Bill Johnson, because that's what happens. Our desire is to preach and teach the word and to help believers grow in their knowledge of Christ so that they can pick up on this stuff. Like, that's what our desire is. And automatically, when somebody like me, now we've had, and my wife and I were just talking about this at lunch, because the growth that we've had the last couple of months has been unbelievable. And again, I always preface, I don't care about the growth numbers. That's, if you know me and if you listen to my stuff, even 1 or 2 episodes, that's not what I am. Like, I want to produce good content. I want to teach truthful. And I want to make sure that you leave encouraged and knowing that, like, listen, like, I'm not in it for the numbers, because listen, I would teach something different if I was in it for the numbers. And I'm also going to elaborate more on that in a moment, with something that I put on Facebook, or that I was going to put on Facebook. But we've seen a lot of growth. Okay. So we're getting good exposure on our videos, and our Facebook page is growing and things like that. But when my little platform, okay, when I critique, Bill Johnson, let's just say it, because that's the sermon in that I did. You would think that I was, they were live streaming on CBS News, and everybody in the world saw it, and everybody in the world came out of the woodwork to critique me on it. And one of the things that I pride myself on is when I am going to make a statement about somebody, Bill Johnson, for example, I've done my homework. And that is not me being, puffing my chest out and saying I'm never wrong. That's me saying I've done my homework. And that's why I do I did the sermon review on Bill Johnson. That's why I talk about his articles and stuff, because I've formed, and many of us have, we've formed a pretty truthful analysis of his teaching and who he is and the church's system and things like that. But I also want to make sure that he didn't one day say, you know what, I got it wrong, and I'm repenting, and I am now going to teach solid theology. I got to make sure that, because nobody that I critique because of their like, I pick on Stephen Furtick all the time, because he's like, if you look at pictures of him from like 6 or 7 years ago, he's this scrawny little dude, and now it looks like he could break people in half. Like, I joke about that, but that's not why I don't like Stephen Furtick. So there's nobody that I critique that I'm just like, you know what, I don't really like this guy because of, Bill Johnson wears glasses, and that just bothers me really badly. I don't do that with anybody. But I always try to pull out, we are never going to get to this article now that I think about it. That's fine. I always try to pull out what they're saying. And that's like the Founders documentary. If you haven't seen the Founders documentary yet, you need to watch it. I've talked about it numerous times. But the Founders documentary did that very thing. Like, they just pulled content and they talked about it. Like, it wasn't Dr. Askell or Dr. Longshore's opinion and saying like, well, this happened and, oh, there's no record of it, but we were there and we saw it. Like, they didn't make up any elaborate stories. They played the clip of the person saying the things that they're saying. There's no way when you go to the source and you play what they said, like, there's no way you can twist that. Like, that's why, like, I put up articles. I show the video. That's why, like, we do that, is so you can see that this is not, I'm not making something up, because, like, honestly, when I put Bill Johnson in one of my titles, my viewers go up. And I'm not even talking about like my inner circle and friends of people that support me on a regular basis. I'm talking about people that I've never interacted with before. When I post the YouTube video, the analytics don't lie. The numbers do not lie. Those search terms are all the time. And so again, if I was in it for views and stuff like that, like, listen, like I'm an affiliate through YouTube. I've reached the level of hours watched and subscribers and stuff like that. And I say that so like people understand, like, I don't want anybody to think like that's like in the last 28 days, I made $16.22. In the last 28 days, I also had to use my debit card for 29 cents. So that tells you where I'm at financially. And that also tells you that I'm not in it for any of that. But when I put Bill Johnson in the title, it's like it's a different animal. It's an entirely different animal. And before I forget, I want to make sure that I point this out about what Derek said. Derek made a comment. He said, here's Bill Johnson and blood pressure intensifies. I was reflecting yesterday. I wrote this really long Facebook post. And for whatever reason, Holy Spirit, I'm sure, I didn't post it. And that's rare for me. Like, I'll admit it. I can be a little quick. And I fly off sometimes. And most of the time, if I'm questioning it, I ask my wife, and she reads it, and she has no problem telling me yay or nay. We have a really good relationship when it comes to that. We also have a really good relationship when it comes to her calling me out on my teaching and holding me accountable and things like that. I think that's what the home should be. So I had this really long post, and I was reflecting on this interaction that I had yesterday with somebody, and then also a conversation that my wife and I were having about I made a simple statement about Stephen Furtick, and it wasn't anything hateful. It was just that I said, if Elevation wants to improve their church, they should remove Stephen Furtick as pastor. That's all that I said, okay? I then immediately was just bombarded, and people were calling me hateful. They were calling me a slanderer. They were asking for proof, and I was giving them proof, and they still didn't want to hear it. And it's funny because I get people all the time that like they call me, they call me names. I've been called in the last year. I went through some of my comments. Like I've been called a white supremacist. Yeah, me. I've been called racist. I've been called a false teacher. I've been called, actually, you know what? I'm going to read the list because I saved this, quote, or I saved this post. I didn't end up posting it, and I don't think I'm going to post it because it's really it's a better post to be just kind of like discussed. I didn't want it to come across as like I am I'm trying to like puff my chest out or anything like with some of this stuff. But here's some of the names that I've been called over the last. I've been doing Theology Nights for 16 months. So let's just say 16 months. I've been called a Pharisee. I've been called a false teacher. I've been called a white supremacist. I've been called a racist. I've been called a religious nut, a liar, a know-it-all, and countless other names that I've lost track of. And like, I have 170 some odd YouTube videos. You can scroll through all of them and you can go read some of these comments that I get. And honestly, there's comments that I've had to delete because they've just been that bad. And this is the stuff that I've left. And I don't leave it and I don't mention it so I can say to you guys, like, well, look at me and look at all this stuff I'm going through and blah, blah, blah. It's not that at all. The reason why I say those things is because all the time when somebody says that I'm a false teacher, it's never that my teaching is the issue. It's hey, Michael Schneider's here. Good to see you, man. Long time no talk. It's never that, hey, you exegeted Hebrews 1 the other day and you did a really poor job of it. And here's where your error was. It was you called Beth Moore a plague and you explained why she should not be followed. Therefore, you're a false teacher because I like Beth Moore and you poked at somebody that I liked, and that's a problem. But I am like, when you do stuff on the internet, you have no question but to invite people to critique your stuff. And I don't mean that like, I'm not saying about all these names and I'm like, oh, well, boo-hoo me. Like, I put my stuff on the internet because I have nothing to hide. You don't have to spend much time watching my stuff to learn what I believe. You also don't have to spend much time watching my stuff to know that I firmly believe this stuff. And with that, there is a sense of responsibility. And this is kind of what I was leading into. There is a responsibility. First off, when I tell somebody that I'm a pastor, their whole entire posture and demeanor and language typically changes towards me. But now, and Alistair Begg says it this way. He told a story once at a conference, and he said to this guy he was playing golf with, and the guy asked, what do you do for a living? And Alistair says, and so in that moment, I've got to say, am I going in or am I going out? Because as soon as you mention that you're a pastor, not just pastors, but anytime that you are in a conversation that's leading you towards to talk about Christ, we've got an obligation to talk about Christ. But anytime that this comes up, that people in my community, they know what I do and stuff like that. And they also know that I'm very outspoken about certain people. And so that's, we've lost friends and my wife and I, and, we've had people literally just act like they don't know us anymore. Thankfully, there's been some people that I've been able to have good conversations with, but we've just flat out lost. People have just, they've really said some poor things about us and just stuff that is not at all either way. I can deal with it. I feel bad because my wife was joking. She's like, I'm glad I don't know these people because I'd get so mad at all the comments because she sees some of them sometimes, or I'll tell her and stuff like that. And I was telling her I got a pretty good circle of friends that they understand what it's like. But this stuff just sort of it sort of rolls off. But I feel bad for, my wife in a situation that she was in before, and the outcome was not at all good. I feel bad for her because it's different for her than me. It's happening to me every day. And I've, if I didn't want to do this because I was afraid of getting called names, I would have stopped a month into it. I would have. But I interacted with this guy that my wife and I know the family really well. They're amazing people, and they are. I'm not going to give too much details, and not that this person watches my stuff. We're a little different theologically. I hadn't seen him for a long time. The last time I had a conversation with him actually was when I was sitting across the table from him trying to explain to him why the Word of Faith theology was wrong. And it was heartbreaking at that point because he said, I don't agree with you. And we had a good conversation. It's not like, we just, we agreed that we weren't making any progress. We went about our way. And I saw him one time at a wedding, I think. Haven't seen him since. Toby Flenderson. Toby, we just watched that. Hi, Brent. We just watched that episode the other night that it says where you are a thief of joy. I had an interaction with this guy once, didn't talk, and then now. We're I know what the guy's theology is. I just, I know. They're very just a part of the Word of Faith system and all of that. And so we're 13 words into our conversation, and he mentions Bill Johnson. And so again, I've got to decide at that moment, am I going in or am I not going in? The feeling, okay, and this is what really inspired this Facebook post, because when I get critiqued on the internet and all that's fine. I don't know these people, but when people that I've known that have critiqued me, I often wonder, do they know when it's Saturday afternoon and I'm in my study and I'm reading through my sermon and I think I got it wrong, and I delete my sermon and I completely redo it 12 hours before I'm supposed to preach? I wonder if people that are criticizing me know that I do that because I care so much about the Word and the people that I get to preach to. And so I was thinking about that. And then I was also thinking about I think you guys know too, I get real anxious about doing this stuff. That's why I've changed the format, because it's too hard for me to navigate through monitors and teach and look at notes and watch the camera and watch my bandwidth. I have enough problem clearly as it is. I get real anxious. And when like there's been times like where I go upstairs and my wife's sitting there and she can see it on my face and I tell her like I'm upset. This is kind of like my week like is the crescendo by doing this. I study all week where I work on my software and I make sure that everything's fine. Like I said today, I came down early, I got everything set up, and of course we had problems. Like that gives me anxiety. Like I don't like that. And so like I wonder if people realize that when they critique me and say that I'm just using a platform so I can sound off to the world that I'm the only one that's right. I wonder if they saw, like if they know that the care that I put into doing stuff like this. But then what I really arrived at was this interaction that I had with this person. And anytime this happens, when I interact with somebody and they say X and Y are my favorite teachers, or that's who we listen to, or that's who we read, and it's X or Y, that person is somebody that I've critiqued and provided a biblical defense of like why they're in error. Like the heartbreak that runs through my body, I cannot describe. You can't make up the feeling that happens when that happens to me. Like it's not manufactured, because I'm not like, like trying to put on a show and like, well, I got to feel bad for this person now. But what I really wanted to do was laugh at them because they're following somebody that's teaching poor theology. Like, no, like my heart breaks. And I really was reflecting on that yesterday. Like, I wonder, like, do people that critique people that are bold in their proclamation of theology and are firm in their understanding of the gospel and don't cater to culture and don't change the message and stuff like that. Like, do you realize the heartbreak and the concern we have for people? Because that's what it really comes down to. It's we're talking about, eternity. We're talking about people's souls. We're not talking about a teacher. We're not talking about a system of theology. We're not talking about a doctrine. Like we have people's souls under our care. Nobody, and I say this all the time, nobody just wakes up one morning and says, you know what I think I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I'm going to become a pastor, because that's a great career, I hear. They have good hours. They just play golf once a week and they preach Sunday mornings, and that's all they do. They make really good money. They can just hang out at coffee shops and stuff like that, and of course you can, that's tongue in cheek. That's not at all what it is. We do this stuff because there is a desire in each one of us. And I say that as, Jason Cruz says, serious question of extreme importance. What's your beard oil preference? Okay. I will get to that in one moment. That's a good question. Always can talk about the beard stuff. We do this. We sit behind a camera in our basement. We get together with 2 or 3 of our friends to record podcast episodes. We write articles. We start Facebook groups, whatever it looks like. We preach week in and week out because there is there is a calling on our lives that cannot be satisfied by anything else. And I think it was Charles Spurgeon. Maybe not. I think I use Charles Spurgeon as like my default guy when I don't know who the quote came from, but I know the quote. So Charles Spurgeon said, old Charlie, he said, if there's something that you can do that satisfies your soul more than preaching, go do it. And it's true, because you see that with sort of this entertainment model of the show church. Like, you've got a motivational speaker up on stage who does not care about guarding the word. And now I'm not making a blanket statement, and I'm not saying everybody that does it that way is the same, because it's not. But you can see in their preaching, like that's how you tell. It's not about how many followers they have on their Facebook page for their church. It's not about how nice their website looks. And listen, like, I have a business that I do website and social media for churches. So I like care about that stuff, but I care about doing it in a I'm not going to get into that. I'll rant forever and we'll be here all night. There's a clear difference between somebody who is doing pastoral work as a job and somebody who has dedicated their life to ministry. And again, that's not putting me or any of my friends up on a pedestal. That is me just like being honest. Okay. That is me like sharing that there's all this stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and I'm thinking of like, the guys that are in here right now that I've had conversations with just over the last 24 hours, and Derek and I were talking, and we were discussing how like it's 2020, and look at what we're doing right now. Like, think about that. Think about what has to happen in my basement in Poland, Ohio, to reach people all across the world, because we have people that literally watch all across the world, to reach people. Melly Garrett, what's up? Good to see you. Thank you. To reach people with the gospel. Think about like what goes into that. And think about the setup and all the stuff that we use and social media that we can share the gospel and like we just have like an unbelievable opportunity to make much of Christ in all that we do. And so I'm not saying that you got to start a podcast and a website and stuff like that, but why would you not want to take advantage of that? Why would you not want to give that your all? You know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying that you have to. I'm not saying that you have to like go into ministry. I mean, that's your calling. Like, by all means, go. I'm not saying you have to start a podcast, because honestly, we don't need more podcasts. We have plenty of podcasts. We need better podcasts, I think. And that's part of the reason why I started the Facebook group, because there's so many good podcasts that people need to know about. It's like churches, okay? I personally don't think, don't waste your life. Great quote. I personally think, we were talking about this last night too with, I think I'm just going to spend the rest of the time quoting the things that I've had conversations with people from, because honestly, like all the stuff that we've been talking about is just sort of naturally flowing in this conversation. The church system, I call it the Amazon church box. Like, what happens is you kind of get this, it's a vision, because you got a vision pastor, and they say, we're going to do it different. Like, we're going to put a church here, and it's going to be so different than the other churches and stuff like that. And what happens? The church pops up. It's the same exact as the other church down the street. It's the same church that's around the corner. Same system, same style, same flair, same show, and same preaching. And what happens then is you are creating, Bill Johnson, you are creating an audience of people who have no understanding of theology. Honestly, they don't. And again, that's not a blank. I'm not trying to like say that big churches are bad and automatically if you're a big church, that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm saying that system, that style of church typically produces people who don't understand. R.C. Sproul said it. He said, you know what's wrong with you people, that video? A lot of people know that quote, but he also says that we don't know who God is. Like, that's like why, that's his crescendo. That's why he got so upset, was because this is what's wrong with the church. We don't know who God is. And he's right. He's right. And Chris even said it just now too. If you want to be different, preach the word. Preach it book by book and verse by verse. Like, that's unique. And that's scary that it's unique. That the idea of opening the Bible and preaching it from it week in and week out is looked upon as, Andy Stanley called it cheating. Like, I think he said. He said that, I also believe somebody said that those that preach verse by verse expository style are lazy. And like, listen, if you want to be lazy, the last style of preaching you want to do is expository preaching. Let me tell you what, I'm going to yank 4 verses out of context and preach on why God wants you to be healed all the time, like Bill Johnson does. I'm not going to do it expository preaching. The creation of this movement, and I'm probably lagging really bad because I just noticed that I froze on my stream. Dang it. You guys will have to let me know. The creation of this system of churches, it is creating people that are using the church for an experience and nothing more, really. That they, look at my video is frozen. Oh, man. All right. Well, I'm sorry, guys. I hope it comes back on. Yeah, it's frozen. Let me try to see if I can catch it back up. I'm gonna try to see if I can fix the stream real quick while we're on the fly. Um, this like these people, they don't know any different. You know, like they don't. Let me see this. No, it's frozen, man. Ah, that really bugs me. See, and I was just talking about that's gonna bug me. I don't want to shut off either because there's a bunch of people here. All right, well, let me see if I can do. Let's see if we can do this because my camera's working fine. Man, I was really, and I'm gonna completely lose my train of thought. Let's try. All right, let me try this. Hold on a second. Let me put the chat window up. We'll do that. Let's do. How are you guys doing? I'll be with you in a moment. Let's try this. No, nothing. Oh, man. That really bugs me. Because we were doing, well, honestly, I'm just going to wrap up then because we were like 40 some minutes in. See, this is going to bug me the whole entire night because we were having a really good conversation. And anyways, what the reason why, let me kind of summarize with this because I'm like, I've completely lost my train of thought. The people, or I don't even want to say disciples because they're not disciples. The consumeristic culture in the church is having a national and worldwide impact because of stuff like Bethel, because of stuff like Passion Conference, because of stuff like on and on and on. The mainstream media picks this stuff up, and then it's now everywhere. And people have now formed their understanding of Christianity based upon an article on CNN, which I don't need to tell you is not. Is not. Oh, hey, Noah. Noah's here. I haven't talked to Noah for a couple of days. Nice to see you. And you know what? I don't know if it's my internet because the audio sounded fine. And I'm looking on my stream and it's like, it's just the camera froze. Because even if I go over to through the chat and it's fine. So it's like literally my camera, my trusty camera was what faltered. We're doing disservice to the Word of God by allowing these false teachers to have the nominal Christians. Thank you. And exactly. I got into a discussion once with somebody because I said, in order to be saved, I think you need to articulate the gospel. And I don't mean from like a systematic theology lecture style. I mean, you need to be able to explain what the gospel is. And they told me that, well, it depends on what level of Christianity they're at, and if they're a new believer, and if they're yada yada yada. And I get that. Like, you're gonna grow in your theology and stuff like that, and you're gonna get more knowledge, and you're gonna move on and stuff like that. But listen, like, you got to understand the gospel in order to. It's just plain simple. But there was this little statement in there, like, well, it depends on what level of Christian they are. We've allowed the we've allowed this like baby Christian to sort of be the area where they can hang out, and we can't teach them anything because they're still Thank you, Jason. I appreciate that. They're still growing. And so it's okay if they're involved in a church like that you wouldn't necessarily recommend. I don't know if it's okay. I also don't know that there's ever a time where Paul, or let's say the author of Hebrews, because the author of Hebrews actually calls people out for not growing. There's never a time where in Scripture they say, let the new believer not learn anything and sit under a poor theology church, and that's fine. Let them do that. There's never there. It talks about them starting with milk and then growing, because that's what the book of Hebrews says. You need milk again, not solid food, because solid food is for the mature. So there's a difference there. There's the difference between the milk and then the solid food. But we are stuck just giving milk and never meat, Jonathan Paisley says. That's what's happening, okay? We're just throwing it out there. And nobody seems to care, right? It just, nobody cares. It's a shame, too. It's a shame because it's so popular, and I mean, even Chris and I were talking about this yesterday, and we shouldn't be surprised, because this is what the word tells us is going to happen. It's going to get worse. Paul warned Timothy about it 2,000 years ago, and he says it's going to get worse. Well, evil imposters and deceivers go on from one level of evil to another, deceiving people and doing all this. So I think that's step number one. You have to recognize that this is not something that is unexpected, okay? We were warned, and we should take that warning seriously, because then that encourages us with number two to help people grow on to maturity. Sorry. We have and again, in the book of Hebrews, it says, by this time you should be teachers. That does not mean you should be a pastor and be up on stage on Sundays. What he's saying is that by this time you should have a understanding of the gospel and of the Bible, that you are willfully teaching others. Again, not in a setting of Bible study, not in any official capacity, if that's not what you're called to do. Because again, like we talked about last week, those that teach are going to get judged more strictly. So it's a calling, and you have to distinguish that if that's in fact what you are called to do. But the teaching level that the book of Hebrews is talking about is just basic sharing of Christ, of telling your neighbor about Christ, of teaching the younger believer about Christ, of helping them, okay? And lastly, what happens with that is you are going to have some tough conversations. There are going to be times where you are going to have to decide, am I going in or am I not going in? You might not have to think in the back of your head, well, I did a YouTube video on this guy and I was critical of him, but now because this person's in front of me, I'm going to change my tone. I'm being a hypocrite then. If I'm willing to on YouTube talk about somebody, but I'm not willing to do it in person, that's you might not have to encounter that. But I guarantee you are going to have a conversation with somebody that is not going to be pleasant about their favorite teacher. And you are, we are to know the truth and to be always prepared to give a defense, apologia, right? For the hope that is within us, but do it with gentleness and meekness, right? To do it in a manner that is listen, brother, I understand, and here's why I understand. I went through this. I was at a church like this. I was under that guy's teaching. We grew, but let's take a look at how can I help you to grow in your knowledge of Christ? What's holding you back from departing that style of church or that teacher? What do you think you're gonna miss when you change teams? Let's say, you switch teams from Bill Johnson to John MacArthur. What do you think is going to, like, what you're missing out on, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. Um, that is the place where we need to arrive. People are so afraid of being judgmental, they're afraid to discern. Melly, that is a perfect example, because I just had a bunch of believers do this to me the other day. They told me that I was being judgmental because I was being discerning of a teacher. Like told me, like, use the term, you are judging, you're judgmental. It's because, again, Matthew 7, it says what? Judge not. Okay, so that means don't talk negatively about somebody, especially a Christian. Don't talk negatively about unbelievers. Don't do this, don't do that. The whole entire chapter is about judging people. Like, I'm sorry, like, if you spend some time exegeting John 7, Matthew chapter 7, and the first 10 verses or so, 11 verses, I don't know, I'm way off, I'm sure. But that is about judging people. Like, it's about judging people that are in the church, and why you should do it. And what it talks about is, like, listen, like, make sure you're okay first before you do it. However, once you've done that, then it's okay for you to judging and judgmental. They have, like, such this bad connotation to it that the word has taken on the meaning that it doesn't, like, judge. Like, when you're judging people, like, you're making fun of them almost. That's what judging, like, is. But you are, again, always being prepared to give a defense for the hope that is within you, gentleness and meekness, having compassion, showing compassion towards somebody. And I don't think you can truly show compassion to somebody by withholding, I don't know if instructions is the right word that I want to use, withholding help to them growing in their theology. Maybe that's the best way to say it. We are, again, we're called to do this, and there's a level of people do it bad. There's that's a Grand Canyon jump. Yeah, it sure is. It sure is. But listen, man, when people make that jump, I am just over the moon ecstatic. There's a lot of people that represent us, we, poorly. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are just bullies with it. But then there's just a lot of people that don't care. And they're both in error. I think they're just on opposite sides of. They're the hyper grace, hyper law. But when it comes to discernment, there's the crowd that's just like beat them over the head and almost legalistic. And then there's the crowd that's like, we just need to love like Jesus, like that phrase. Both of those parties need our help just as much as the other. But I think that, like, it starts, like, with us, okay? Like we can't expect that all of the churches tomorrow are just going to be like, you know what? We got it wrong. We're going to start doing exegetical studies of the book of John every Wednesday night. Come join us. Like, we can't expect that to happen. And to kind of circle back to the original point that we were talking about, it's 2020, okay? You have no excuse. You really don't. There are so many free resources. You have no excuse. And listen, like, I am willing to bet that your pastor, if he's a faithful shepherd, if you were to go to him and say, listen, I want to commit my life to growing in my knowledge of Christ, how do I do that? His face will light up, and he will encourage you in any way that he can and give you resources and do whatever to help you. So recognize that, like, once you enter that race, like Paul talks about, you are surrounded by people that are so willing to help you. But you gotta, at some point, you gotta do it. There comes a time, again, that by this time you should be teachers. That's kind of what is that's the reality of what we're doing. I'm gonna pull Logos up really quick because I want to end with one thing. I just want to pull this up on the screen. And I'm really upset that my camera Camera froze. And I'll, you know what's going to happen too? I'm going to post the video on YouTube, and somebody's going to leave a comment. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that. That was the Logos startup sound. Somebody's going to leave a comment and be like, your camera stopped working at minute whatever. You should fix your stuff. Like, yeah, I know. I'm very aware that that's what happened. Like, very aware. Okay, so the book, I'm going to read this from the book of Hebrews, and we're going to end there because we're just going to end there. All right, book of Hebrews, Brad's favorite book of the Bible. If I had a favorite book of the Bible, I should start that series again. I did those like play on words type thing where I was doing, you know, my favorite book of the Bible, but I was defending various books as if they were my favorite book of the Bible. All right, let's get over to Logos. Okay, so we are, and ignore the floating Theology Nights logo. I changed colors of one of my images, and I'm now realizing that it is in front of a white document. Hebrews. End of chapter 5. About this we have much to say. It is hard to explain, since you have become dull of hearing. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. Oracles of God, the Word of God. You need milk, not solid food. For everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil. Therefore, let us leave the elementary doctrine of Christ and go on to maturity, not laying again a foundation of repentance from dead works and of faith toward God, and of instruction about washings, the laying on of hands, the resurrection of the dead, and eternal judgment. And this we will do if God permits. And then he goes on to say, like, it's impossible for those who have, in lists off various things, and I'm not going to get into a big exegetical study on the book of Hebrews, as much as I would love to. He says, like, if you go into apostasy, like, it's pretty strong words. And how does he open his warning? Because that's what the book of Hebrews is concerned with, is apostasy. Is that this group of Hebrew Christians, there were some people amidst them that have arrived at the conclusion that they've heard enough about Christ, they want nothing else to do with him. They've made a conscious decision. They have enough knowledge in order to make a confession of Christ. Like, they can't say that they didn't know. That's what apostasy is. It's turning away from that knowledge and saying, no, I'm going my own way. That's a big theme of the book of Hebrews. How does this warning begin? Like, how is the author saying that you avoid that? Go on, right? What does he say? He says you need to go on to maturity. Leave the elementary doctrine of Christ and go on to maturity. That's like, if we had time to sort of break this text down in an exegetical fashion, like, I guarantee you that's where the text is arriving at its main point. Like, what's the application to the believer in this context? If you're preaching a sermon, leave elementary doctrine, go on to maturity. That's what you're getting out of it. Okay, and then what happens right after that? Verse 4, it is impossible. It is impossible for what? To be restored to repentance if you fall away from in a manner of apostasy. Like, that's really big. Like, that's and again, like, we see the book of Hebrews that in verse 9 it says, though we speak in this way, yet in your case, beloved, we feel sure of better things that belong to salvation. So, and that's, like, I think a lot of things that get mixed up with the book of Hebrews. The warning passages are intended as encouragement, I think. They're warning passages, absolutely, because the language is so strong, but they're meant for encouragement to the believer. Like, this group of Hebrew Christians is being shown an example of a people that they aren't yet, so there's still time for them to be in the faith. And how do they do that? They do it by going on to maturity. We'll stop there. Okay. great show. I really enjoyed tonight. I was really excited about doing this, and I had a great time. Really enjoy the conversations I got to have with the people in the chat. If I missed a comment or something, I apologize. Beard oil is what I'll end with, because we did have a question about that. So my wife got me a beard, like a conditioner and a that I use like twice a week, but it's like real stuff. It's not like, because I would always use her conditioner. It's the real stuff. This stuff is amazing. It like pulls like any like straggly hairs out, and like it's conditioner. It is fantastic. So that's actually all I've been using, because it works so good. I don't have any need for oil. I have and I don't know the name brands. I have some local stuff that I've used of the balm and of the oil. I don't really like oil. Like I don't know. It's just not like my thing. I like the balm. Like that really works well. But the conditioner is the main thing I use. So that's a bonus. So next week we're in normal schedule, 10:30 East or 10:30. Oh my gosh. We're definitely not doing a show at 10:30. 7:30 Eastern time next Tuesday. Also, if you have a moment, just pray for anyone that you know that is in ministry, that is a teacher. Well, I mean, obviously you should pray for people in ministry, but I'm meaning somebody who is engaged in this battle, because there are, like I said, there's so many of us that are having conversations behind the scenes and talking about stuff. And like, it seems like there's a lot of people going through very similar things. And normally when that happens, there is like, there's a breakthrough ready to happen. No, and you couldn't see me do the fist. Dang it. I was being sarcastic when I used that term. Please understand that. There's normally something coming, like when you're kind of like wading through these muddy waters and struggling and stuff like that. There's normally, there's normally something that is, on the horizon. So say a prayer for those of us that are doing this. It's been a trying season for a lot of guys that I personally know. And so we're just excited to teach. There's a lot of good things happening. We appreciate the support. I say we as a whole. We're grateful for messages of encouragement and people trusting us to teach them and to place their families under our care, with considering us worthy to listen to and to share our content, stuff like that. So I'm very grateful for it, and I look forward to next Tuesday. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We probably should talk about the Bethel article, because I didn't even get a chance to do that. Maybe we'll do that, but maybe we'll do 2020 is the year of clear vision for breakthrough. Drew, everybody. Drew with the take us home quote of the day. 2020 is the year of clear vision. But I digress, because I know he's making fun. So, all right, everybody, have a good night. I'll see you next Tuesday.